Hey dudes, welcome back to another episode of our Rhomas Men's Team podcast. You are about to listen to one of our prior team meetings. If you ever want to join one of our live sessions that we have every Monday and Friday, head over to rhomas.com. That's RHOMAS.com and put your email in and we will send you a live link every time we record. We generally record on Mondays and Fridays. So if you ever want to be on the actual podcast, like we bring men up all the time to talk about their goals, talk about their obstacles, etc., head over to rhomas.com. And then also, if you want to help support the channel grow and also have access to exclusive content, book reviews, extra whiteboard sessions, etc., and some coaching sessions, head over to patreon.com and support us. We would love it. But if not, no biggie. We'll see you on the live sessions. Later, dudes. Enjoy this podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team podcast. Matthew J., what's up, brother?
What's up, man?
Nothing much, man. I was telling you a little bit before the episode. I am going through the process right now. My girlfriend is going through the process of, she has a lease. She's leasing her car, which I absolutely despise leases. The finance guy in me just will not allow me to appreciate leases at all. And we're going through that process, and like almost everybody I know who has a lease or who had a lease goes over their miles, and then they owe an extra couple grand. Like right now, she will have to pay. She's 7 months short on her lease, meaning that she's already met her mile. Do you know how leases work by any chance?
Sort of. I know like you can only drive a certain amount. I know it's like a super low monthly payment compared to buying the car. And then you don't have to fix it at all, right? I guess everything's covered mechanic-wise.
No. Nope. That's not true.
What?
Yeah, no, this is we need to correct the narrative around leases because so many people get sucked into them. And don't worry, guys, this is not the main topic today. But
I think it's good, man, because again, like you said, you asked me and I'm like, I know it's a monthly payment. I never did it because it's like I don't like that idea of like, oh, I can't drive today because I'm out of like it's that big being out of minutes on a cell phone. It's like I just want to drive my car. I don't want to have to build my life around.
Oh yeah.
You know, like did I drive too many miles? It's like I no.
No,
I have no understanding other than that. I just figure I'm not smart enough to figure it out. Whenever something sounds good to be true from a big company, I'm like, they're somehow getting over on me and I just won't participate.
That's exactly it. Here's the thing, and this is a good mental model. You always have to do the math from both sides. So even if you don't know the full math, so for instance, like, you know, most people are not going to know how to do the math on long range probability of the roulette table at a casino, right? But you don't have to know how to do that. All you have to do is think about, okay, how can I do the rough math? And that's where they say it's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong. So, okay, do the rough math on a casino. Even though you might not know how to do statistical analysis, what you can say is, okay, is the casino going to have a game in there where they lose overtime, right? You can ask yourself that very high level question and you can make a very good judgment, right? It's obviously the answer is no. They're not going to have any games in there where they're playing against you, where it's just the house against the consumer, where they're going to lose. The same exact logic applies to a lease. So
I think with casinos too, sorry, not to cut you off, but even casinos, if you start winning too much, they kick you out. They're like, dude, we know you're cheating. That's how rigged the games are. If you actually start winning and going to a casino becomes a profitable endeavor for you, I think they pick up on that and like, yo, you're not allowed in here.
I don't know. I've literally never gambled. Actually, that's a lie. I've gambled. You know how you can go into casinos and if you're a new gambler, they'll give you money. Mm-hmm. So they'll give you these little cards and you have to play a certain amount of games on these digital cards and then they'll give you the cash in return. So I've done that. Actually whenever my grandma wants to go to the casino, it's like her like Disneyland. I'll take her there. I'll go get a new card to free money and then I'll do some things on roulette just to get the money out very quickly. And then I take that money and I invest it and I track them to prove a point 20 years from now.
So explain that. So you can go, you're going to get kicked out of the casino, dude. They don't like people like you. So they'll give you, what do they give you? Like $10?
Yeah. They give you $10-$20.
That's pretty cool.
Oh dude. It's legit. So you know what's there's so many little opportunities out there for like to take some quick cash, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50, especially from casinos. And also if you do like different bank accounts and credit cards, I don't like credit cards, but you can go and roll over money, let's say to a bank account. I think like, don't quote me on this, but I think HSBC right now has a deal where if you roll a certain amount of money over in 90 days, they'll give you up to $500.
Damn.
So yeah, it's very much it's an interesting thing. So you can do the same thing with casinos. So that's what I would do, because it's like, if I'm going to be there anyway, so I'll grab this little $10, $20 card, and you have to play a certain amount of games. And then, sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down, obviously, but I will take it. My rule is I will play a certain amount of time, and then I'll take out that cash, and then I literally go cash it out, put it in my bank account, and then invest it. And then I've been tracking it for years, so that way I can prove a point 20 years from now of like,
God.
this is all free money.
Well, that's kind of, I think, what they're taking advantage of is the fact that you'll get the free, so even if you lose on that card, you still get to cash out and get your little $10 and go. But
no, you could lose the $10.
Oh, I got what you're saying. So you play with their money, and if you up, you take it and you immediately leave. Okay, that's pretty cool, because that's kind of like a little quick snapshot of like how people ruin themselves investing. Because like one story, the story of being like, I get it, I make sure I maintain the $10, I cash it out, I'm out of there, I pocket the money, is a less sexy version of being like, I turned that 10 into 20, and then I hit blackjack, and that turned into 200. Now I'm the gambler on the dusty boat on the Mississippi playing cards with like a pirate or something. It's like, and that's not a real thing. It just ends with you losing all your money. And like, God damn it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and the point is, and by the way, I'm not recommending it actually taking time to do it, because I think there's a lot of people who do that. Like they'll spend time like doing all these like little schemey type of things, when at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you can do that if you're going to spend a weekend in Vegas and you don't really like to gamble and you're going to be there anyway. But when you're trying to produce income for you or your family, the best way to do it is to create value for others. I mean, that's what capitalism should all be about. But for the leases, what I was saying is you don't have to know how to do the math, because the math can get kind of tricky, because they try to throw you off, right? They really do. Like when I was in there, so we were in there and we were shopping, and I'm telling her like, don't get a lease, and we're doing the numbers, and she's like, well, they're giving me these false deadlines, right? They're giving me, oh, well, we got this deal. Literally, it ends this Friday. It just so happens to end Friday, And then we talk to another guy, and it ends Saturday, and then with Saturday goes by, and they call us on Monday. They say the deal ends tomorrow, right? Which would be Tuesday. So it's like, before you even get all that, do the rough math in your head, just saying, okay, lease versus buy. They're offering me this deal. And what a lease is you go and you rent the car. Basically, that's what a lease is. You're renting the car, right? It's it's an alternative way of financing it. And then you stay in the car, typically 2 to 3 years, depending on the lease. I think most of them are 3 years. And then at the end of that, you can buy the car if you want to, or what usually happens is you're usually behind your miles, and you give the car back, and you parlay that into the next car. And basically, at least they give you a certain amount of miles that you can drive every year. And this particular company, they did it in 12,000, 15,000, and 17,000 miles per year. Anyway, long story short, what happens is if you look at the depreciation curve of a lease, it's basically most people know this. The first year you have a car, the depreciation is enormous. It drops in value by, I don't know, for this particular car, I think it was like 20%, something like that for the first year. And then it tends to smooth out a tiny bit. So it's not as steep. So it doesn't lose as many dollars the second year and the third year and so on. It's still a curve, because it's still a depreciating asset. But eventually cars kind of hit what they call in math, was it an asymptote almost, like where it kind of plateaus out and gets close to zero, but always never kind of gets to zero. So the point I'm trying to make is I just hate leases, man. Like I'm sitting there talking to these guys, and they're doing it. Say, hey, all these little salesman tricks, and then we go out in the parking lot, and I do the rough math, and I create a Google spreadsheet on my phone, and then I come back in. I say, well, here are the numbers, and they're like, well, yeah, but if you look at them, like, no, there's no fucking looking at it. It's just math, or it's just numbers. You're not looking at it from a different angle. So the point is, a car company is not dumb. Right? When you are renting out that car, do you think they're going to lose money on the deal over 3 years? No, they're going to make money, and it's going to be, in my opinion, substantial money. And then the goal is to get you into the next lease. So just a quick little finance tip there, man. I hate leases. I think the average, basically what they're charging you on that, I think Consumer Reports wrote about it, was like 14% interest, basically. If you do the math. 14% interest on your money each year. And that's terrible, right? Versus you could buy the car, right? And especially at today's interest rates, get a very low interest rate. Some dealerships are offering like 0%. However, that is for a new car. I don't like buying new cars, again, because that's depreciation curve. However, you could buy the car, and I think the loan offer that she got from her bank was like 4% or something like that, which is obviously way higher than 0. But she could take that 4% and buy let's say a 1-year-old or 2-year-old car. So you kind of hit a sweet spot in the depreciation curve if you still want certain safety features, et cetera. Because I like purchasing 4 or 5-year cars, even older. But anyway, and then when you purchase that car, you could always sell it in the future if you want to. A lease, you can't sell it. Right. So
you're locked in. Yeah. You're okay. Yeah. So how does it actually work when you say you pay 14%? So like, I'm thinking like I can get the new Dodge Dart and I'm paying $125 or $200 a month. And it's like, what do you mean I'm paying more money? I'm just paying $200 a month. And then I cash it in. Now I'm paying $200 a month on another car. So between the two cars, something happens where like, hey, you actually drove a little too much. You got to give us a little more.
Yeah. So 2 things. Number one, if you look at what the car loses in value, right? So let's just say the car loses $10,000 in value for the first year, but you paid $14,000, right? I'm just making up those numbers, right? So you paid 40% more than the actual depreciation of the car. So you lost that in value, but you pay. So basically the car company in that situation made $4,000. Right? Because then when they take the lease back, let's just say they took the lease back, then they could take the lease back and they could sell it for whatever the remaining value is. Does that make sense? You can't.
Oh, I got you. So you paid them what the depreciation would have been, and they get that money, and then they can sell it for what it is at its market value.
Well, it's worse. It's you paid them what the depreciation would have. Well, you paid what the depreciation was plus profit. Versus if you own the car, you absorb the depreciation, but then you can sell it. So you're only out whatever interest rate you paid on your loan. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. So when you lease, I'm still trying to figure out. So if you say I leased a car, I stayed within the miles and traded it back in, is it still a bad deal?
Yeah. Well, in like 99% of cases, and it's for the same reason. Let's say you nail it perfectly, right? You get 15,000 miles and you hit 15,000 miles for that year, and it's usually a 3-year lease, so 45,000 miles, where you hit exactly what you need to hit. Well, they're charging you the monthly amount that they are charging you, right? Let's just say the annual amount. They know that the car is going to depreciate by $10,000 a year. Let's just to make the math easy. They're not going to charge you $10,000. They're going to charge you whatever, $12,000, $14,000. They're going to charge you depreciation plus profit.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Because if you think about it like this, let's think about why is that more profitable for a car company? And I'm sure I don't know all the nuances because I've never worked for a car manufacturer and I haven't worked in their finance department, but I'm just guessing. So, and I would not be surprised if I'm a little off, but I'm probably mostly right. If you think about it, if you take a 10-year period, right, or let's just say a 9-year period because leases go in 3-year terms. Well, if you do leases, right, yes, you get a new car every 3 years. And that is obviously one of the big gold shiny objects for people. They want to hear good news about their bad habits. So it doesn't take too much to convince people to get a lease, even though they kind of feel like, they're getting gypped a little bit. So the real math you got to do is do it over, let's say, a 9-year period. Well, over a 9-year period, if you purchased a car, right, typically let's say, car loans, you could do 3-year car loan, right? So you could own that car in the first 3 years, right? And then never have a car payment ever again for the next 6 if you're going on a
sell it and get the extra money.
Exactly. And sell it and get the extra money. I made a spreadsheet into my girlfriend's, she's not exactly happy about it. But
how did the sales guy like your spreadsheet? That must have been absolute kryptonite, dude.
Oh, dude, they hated it. And I wasn't even trying to be a jerk. I said, okay, so basically what you're saying is like, and I pulled out a number and they looked at me like I invented fire. They're like, well, I guess that is a number. It's like, this is easy math, right? This is, you're charging this and all these smoke and mirrors, right? It's just, in my opinion, it's BS. And that's not what a salesperson should be. Like, obviously, in our business, I do investment management. So there's a certain amount of influence and persuasion in sales that I have to do, right? But I always just go in as a teacher, not a salesperson. I wish more salespeople would understand that. It's like, hey, you're coming into this domain. You don't do this every day, right? Like she doesn't buy a car every day. Why not just teach her all of the options? And then she can make a decision on an educated decision. And chances are it increase your referral base massively because you're a teacher, not a salesperson. So they were just purely trying to sell. Like, oh, do this. And like, oh, if you think about it like this, it's like, dude, I don't need to fucking think about it. Like, anyway, just teach me the ins and outs of this. Like I was your brother. Right. And then we can make a decision from there. I just wish more salespeople would do that. I really,
yeah,
really
man.
do.
I mean, especially, so for my co-host Shane on Matt and Shane's, he used to sell cars, and we were talking about when I bought my car. And he was laughing, being like, dude, for some reason, the car industry is like it's the only industry where like you go in to buy the thing and it's always just some guy with a goatee lying to you the whole entire time. You're like, what the hell? He's like, it's crazy. The amount of like just encouraged deception that goes into that. Even, dude, gym memberships. You sit down to get a gym membership and all of a sudden it's like you need to have like a beautiful mind in order to like understand. It's like, wait a second, am I paying $30 a month or what? And they're like, yeah, you're paying $30 a month, then you put down 20%, and then and it's just like, whoa, dude, why are you doing car commercial talk? It's like, I just want to pay $30 a month for a gym. Can I do that? Yeah, but then you got to pay the equipment fee every 6 months. You throw that in there, we'll take that off, put that back in. It's like, what the fuck? How much do I have to pay? It shouldn't be like a mind bender. It's like, here's how much money I'd like to pay a month. Can I come in here and lift your weights? Yes or no? It's like, no, you can totally do it. Then they'll tack on these extra, well, then, but every like 60 days you have to pay this fee, which goes into that, but you get that back. You stay on here. It's like, I give up, man.
I know, man.
I'm going to go to the planet.
if more, what'd you say?
I'm just going to go to the planet.
Dude, $10 a month. I mean, you talk about financial trickery. That company, I've never looked into their financials, but to be able to pull off like $10 a month for Planet Fitness, I mean, amazing for their members. But I don't know how the hell that's sustainable over time. I mean, they did something. They had to be massively leveraged, or so. I'm just guessing. It's pretty wild.
I think they bank on people not going.
Oh, well, no, definitely. I mean, so I was talking to a friend who's a valuation guy. And valuation is just a snobby way of saying in finance, he just values assets in companies.
Mm-hmm.
But we were talking about gym memberships because he was valuating. Dude, it may have been Planet Fitness. I'm not sure. Funny enough. But yeah, they bank off of the vast majority of people not showing up. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. And if you think about it, it doesn't take rocket science to figure it out. Just go into your local gym, your local big box gym, whether it be LA Fitness, Planet Fitness, and so on. You got to imagine they have thousands of members, thousands, if not tens of thousands. And you see the same people. And if you go there every day, you see basically the same 100 people there every day. So you can really understand the asymmetry in attendance there. Yeah,
especially for the planet. It's like every New Year's you just get ready and you're just coffers fatten with a bunch of people. And it's just enough money where like, dude, a $10 subscription I think is like psychologically the perfect amount, because I'm amassing more and more $10 a month subscriptions. Like I constantly get them for stuff and just forget about them. And the idea of going back and like, let me undo these things, I'm like, I don't even know where to begin.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of mental friction, and for a lot of gyms, you have to like write in to cancel.
Yeah,
and it's like, good luck. I've only written 5 letters in my life, and every time I write a letter, I've got to Google it. Seriously, I'm just not used to putting stamps on things, and then you got to weigh it and all that. I don't know, it bothers me. I'd rather pay the $10 a month for the rest of my life.
No, that is good though to think about that. Like again, it's like I'm gonna have a new car, I'm gonna have this, or it's like, you buy a car. It's like we did. They were trying to sell us a 2020, and I was like, dude, I'm just not. This was actually, with Brittany, we were talking about it, and again, they're same thing. Like, here, try the all new 2020. They throw you in that, and I'm like, oh, well, we want like a 2019. Like, oh, we don't have them. Straight up lied to us. They did. Brittany checked the website. Turns out, like, Honda.com says you guys do have them, but that was like the day later. So they just lie. They're like, no, we only have the 2020s, and then like, so like the one's $30,000, the other one's like 20. We get them down to like 23. Just 1 year difference, $7,000 difference. But they also, the other one had a moonroof, right? And like heated seats, some other shit, and and some other different like Apple Touch nav, I don't know, but it's basically the moonroof is the big thing. And she's like, I don't know, I really want a moonroof. And we're sitting in the car, and I'm like, would you pay $8,000 for that little piece of glass in your car? And she was like, damn, I didn't think about that. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, fuck this thing. Let's go to 2019. And we found they had 2019. We got that. But yeah, it's like,
do you ever use the moonroof? I've never had one.
Yeah, I've never had one. I mean, I think they're cool. I've rented cars. So I'm like, oh, cool, look, and it's like, look at that. And you open it and you get like air on your head. It's like, this is kind of cool. But it's like for 8 Gs, it's like if they're like, yo, $50, I'd be like, all right, I'll pony up. I won't even pay, dude, for first class. I've flown first class once because the upgrade was super, super cheap. And I'm like, I'll do it. I was like, first class is awesome. And I look at it again. I'm like, $300 extra. I'm like, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Don't need
No,
it.
man, I get it. Just doing the math and articulating it like you did to Britt. That's exactly what you have to do. So just so everybody knows, my general feeling on leases is I would most likely never lease. Like at some point, maybe there comes out with such a great deal, or maybe at some point I want to have such a desire to have a new car every 3 years. That's really the thing. Like, do you drive relatively little, and then do you just want a new car every 3 years? Even at that point, I would honestly even consider still buying and paying because, and then reselling if I needed to. Because at the end of the day, I think as a man, you should try your best to reduce as many unnecessary obligations into the future as possible, because you don't know the chaos that can come up in the future, right? If you have it, like I've never had a car payment ever. And I can say that there have been times where it's like, thank God I don't have extra expenses, right? I want to take advantage of this business opportunity, or shoot, I can't afford certain things, that if I would have been buried under a monthly debt obligation of a few $100 or a few $1,000s, I mean, I don't understand how people do it. Like, and I don't want to make this necessarily a finance episode, but you can extrapolate it to a larger worldview of stop tacking on all of these future obligations because you don't know what the future is going to be like. And then let me say unnecessary future obligations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, really,
and this could happen even with friends, like when you make commitments or all these like unnecessary things you're just doing to yourself, and you're setting up all these expectations that somebody's going to ask you for in the future, and then you make your life very stressful. Same thing with debt. Same thing with a lot of other things. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's just short-term, long-term thinking. It's like,
yep.
if you constantly are engaging in short-term gratifying events, long-term things will slowly start to degrade for you. You'll
Oh,
go
100%.
on vacation. You're like, oh shit, I don't have any money. You look at all these things that piled up, and you're like, oh, I'm the life I'm pursuing isn't like building towards anything. I'm just slowly, just like, I'm in like an arcade all day, just like putting all my quarters into machines and being like, whoa,
Yep.
whoa, whoa, whoa. And then you leave, you're like, damn, I have no more quarters left.
Man, I could tell you there's no better feeling, or there's very few better feelings of being able to go and spend money on something or do something, and that there's no extra repercussions. That you're not spending money on a credit card and you're going to have to pay, you're just kicking the can down the road for one day. Inevitably, you're like, oh shit, my credit card bills, now $2,000 a month, and my total outstanding balance is 80 grand, right? Like, that's a terrible feeling when you finally have that come to Jesus meeting, but versus being ahead of the game. And again, that's with anything. It's the same thing with like friendship or family relationships, knowing that you've invested into the relationship ahead of time rather than constantly taking from the relationship and feeling like you're constantly in debt. So it's the same principle. Money is just it's just a unit of measure.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Well, that's funny too, because that kind of goes into the stuff I was thinking about, which was like, like I finally, actually just this last month, dude, not to get premature on the wins, but like I now have exercise and meditation built into my day in a way that, like, as a habit, is a way that I didn't have. Like, I fell off. So that was and it took about, I was tracking this. It took about 6 weeks, basically the time, not even a little longer, about 2 months, the time that we've done this. Within those 2 months, I've been able to actually, and doing like the daily wins, the scorecard and all this stuff, I've been able to actually, build in habits that I always wanted present in my life. I wasn't disciplined enough, or I just for some reason would wake up, and really it is the morning, man, when you wake up and you're like, I got to do all this stuff. It's like, no. What I try to do, and I sway from it every now and again, but it's like, I try to, as quickly as I can, call my attention back towards like physically, or not, well, planning my day, of just being like, rather than waking up and like, I'm going to do all these things. I'm like, no, I'm going to set like 2 or 3 things that I will get done, and actually doing the things that I say I'm going to do, God willing, there's no like event that takes me from it.
Yeah. Do you do that analysis before you start your physical activity and say like, I'm going to do these things, or do you do your physical activity and meditation and then plan?
So here's what I've so to take it all the way back to like the moment
Yep.
I wake up and I'm always like, I'm laying there and I'm like, man, I'm going to check my phone. And then it's like, that already starts like, and I can be like, well, I'm going to check my emails. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Which I'm not even really against, but it's like when I'm laying there being like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't get out of bed until I formulate a plan of like, I'll lay in bed and be like, what am I going to do today? Even if
Mm.
it's simple as like, just, I'm going right now to go downstairs and exercise. So basically, so I don't get like pulled into the swirl of like content and just stuff that's online. If I just wake up and like,
Yep.
I'm going to go check my emails. Now I check an email. Now I see a message. Now I see like, Joe Biden saying something dumb. Now I'm watching a video of Joe Biden. Now I'm to another video, and I've already been pulled into the swirl of external events rather than consciously crafting the events of my day and at
Yep.
least trying to do certain things rather than just being kind of like pulled along and like just ogling things online or otherwise.
Well, I think action is actually a bit of a misnomer. I think that what humans do, and myself included, is we don't act. I think a more accurate definition is we react. And we are reacting to a feeling, and that feeling, so the prerequisite to action is a feeling. The prerequisite to a feeling is a thought. And you're either letting those thoughts be influenced by some stimulus, right? Like your iPhone or whatever, or you can originate those thoughts just on your own, or you can look at something positive. So those are kind of three options there. So when you look at your vision board every day, right, that will give you a certain thought. That thought gives you a certain feeling. Let's just say for your vision board for your daughter, right? You right in the center of your vision board, you look at that. And what I love about vision boards is they're fixed. Phones are not fixed, right? Your Instagram and your Facebook is not fixed. You don't know what the crap it's going to bring up in front of your eyeballs every single morning, and it's going to take your thoughts off wildly. So, but if you look at a vision board every single day, that's fixed, and it gets your mindset. You will think a certain thing about those pictures. Let's just say it's your daughter. You see your daughter. Oh yeah, I got to remember I need to kill it today for her. That's going to give you a certain feeling, and then you are going to react to that feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's not even like, so there was like, there's the feeling I'm going to kill it today that can kind of spin you almost away from, the whole family system or like being totally present where it's like, I'll wake up like, I'm going to get all this stuff done. But then for me, I see the picture, I'll see my picture of Maya and it's like, it's in the middle of everything. And then it reminds me like, yes, you have to work, you have to get stuff done, but ultimately your purpose is to create like a stable ecosystem in your house, and again, working has a lot to do with that because if you're scrounging for bills, it's like, things get kind of erratic and stressful. So it's like,
Yep.
it's a little bit of everything. It's like waking up, make sure you spend some time with everybody, make sure you do the things you're supposed to do, make sure when you go downstairs to work, you're not just doodling and twiddling around and fucking off, stuff like
Yep.
that. Just, it's just like, when I meditate, the whole idea is to try to like simply just to breathe and just allow yourself to just breathe without like evaluating it and like, I'm doing this wrong. It's like, no, like you're making it known that your thoughts are helpful, but they're not like in charge or they're not the thing that's dictating your reality. It's just a process. It's just, you're actually thinking. So it's like being able to get some distance from that and, just constantly remind yourself, because I get pulled away from what I'm trying to do all like hundreds of times a day, but it's like
Yep.
being able to recenter yourself. Even like, the day this morning, I was like, shit, I didn't write down my stuff from yesterday. Totally fine. As long as it's not about like being systematic, but just be consciously regrounding yourself. You're regrounding your entire day in a purpose that's guided by things that you've decided, if that makes
Mm.
sense. It's kind of vague. It's hard for me to actually put into words, but it's like, are you doing the thing that you find meaningful and purposeful? And have you even decided that? And are you able to pursue that in like almost a regimented way, where your days are you working towards like, dude, the book you gave me, The Law of Success,
Oh yeah.
definite chief aim. That's like, I love that, man. It's
Let's
like,
talk. Let's talk about it, man. This is one of the most underrated books ever.
I was surprised when you gave it to me. I was surprised. It dovetails with a lot of the, what is it called? Theosophy. It's like kind of like that, mystical kind of alchemical stuff of like, talking about matter. Like the beginning of it, I thought it was going to be like a Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
No.
I open it up, this dude's like breaking down matter and the ether, and I'm like, yes, I fucking love this shit. So it reminds me, there's a book, I guess it's like Rosicrucianism. It's like, and I don't know exactly what that is, but I read a book, Zanoni. It's a fiction book, but it's supposedly it's like it gives people like an insight to like the thinking of Rosicrucians or whatever. Rosicrucianists, I don't know what they're called.
Hmm.
But the law of success touches on a lot in the very beginning, a lot of very similar things of like, breaking matter down into like all of its component parts. And, when you start to kind of, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. When you like, what did you think when you read the first chapters?
Well, it's definitely part what some people would say is like part weird. It's like a little mysticism, like those types of things. But basically, I found myself toggling between being super pumped up and saying, "Oh yeah, that makes complete sense," and then a little turned off with those types of things. But I'm open to it. So, for instance, I think in general, the concept is thoughts are things, right? Like your actual thoughts are things in the world, and they go out there in the world and the universe, and they impact other things. I've now heard that enough times. I think Will Smith talks about it a lot. Like there's a lot of people who talk about it. Denzel Washington, a lot of these people talk about those types of things. And I'm definitely open to the idea. And I actually say I'm in the world of borderline, if maybe not even believing that, of saying, like, go at a very minimum, even if that's wrong, even if that's scientifically wrong, thinking that it's right can have a massively profound impact on your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's what I was kind of thinking too, of like, if you can, again, getting into all that stuff, like reducing everything into the same constituent molecule of an atom kind of makes it kind of like, demystify stuff in a weird way, where like what you were like, what I was kind of sitting here trying to explain something. I kind of was like, I don't know where I'm going. And this is like the mega mind stuff they talk about. If you have people who are focused on a similar thing, I can kind of tap out, let you talk for a little bit. And it's like, oh, cool. Now, I'm going back to my thing. So it's like, it gets into stuff that I find so interesting, and I can feel it when I'm reading it. Then I go to put it into words and I'm like, oh, blah, 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 and I can't, like, it kind of puts me at a loss. But yeah, I mean, it really helps you taking your thoughts. I'm trying to like giving your thoughts weight, being like, just saying like what I think is actually important and can have an impact helps you just not think that you're kind of walking around totally purposeless and meaningless, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Of being like, no, the things that I think and the actions I do, even if they're only affecting my family, have a profound impact on the world.
Unbelievably accurate.
And if you don't think that, then it's like, well, that's kind of depressing, if you're just like, no, it doesn't matter. I could be a dick to them. I could be nice. It's just like, whatever. That is kind of a pretty defeated attitude. I've inhabited that myself a lot. And it's just, I'd rather think that what I'm doing has an impact, even small, that does ripple out, and again, if you start talking about thoughts kind of like going out in the world, he talks about like thoughts being actually stored in the ether, which is like, we're kind of conducted. I'm like, I like that, I think, because it just makes you feel on some level very connected to your surroundings, which I think especially for human beings who are naturally hyper-connective, it just kind of puts you at ease in a weird way. I think that's all I'm trying to say.
Well, man, I can tell you with like eerie results, like just crazy. Cause I'm as robotic as they come in terms of like, just thinking mechanically and sequentially. But I can tell you that, let's just say for dating, I went through the exercise. Somebody convinced me of the exercise. They're like, okay, write down exactly what you want. Like exactly what you want. And this was after years and years and years of dating. Said exactly what you want, hair, eyes, personality, all these things. I can tell you that literally, man, I wrote this stuff down, and within 4 weeks, of barely even trying, got several dates. This was years ago, several dates with people, with women who looked exactly and acted exactly like my document said. And there's something weird about that. Like even with my mind of saying, this doesn't make sense, like something is off. And maybe it's some sort of mechanism in the brain. I think there's something called the reticular activating system, which seeks out things of specific details. Let's even say that's the case. So it doesn't have to be some mystical explanation. I could tell you that the end result just blew my mind, right? Whatever that is, whether it's the part of the brain or the part of the unit, whatever that is, I can tell you is just crazy. And so then I started extrapolating that and saying, okay, well, where else can I use this? And just defining what you said in the book, right? In that book, what do they call it? Your definite aim.
Chief aim.
Yeah. Like defining what you want, as simple as that sounds, it's just crazy what kind of results that produces. It's unbelievable. I can't even if I were to explain it fully, and I'm glad I kind of can't articulate it right now, but if I were to explain it fully, it would probably discredit me, right? Because like, oh, that just sounds like woo-woo hippy dippy stuff. But I'm telling you, man, it works.
This gets into the book. The Secret was like, put this out. A lot of people really like that idea because, you know, it's if you throw it out there and you're like, hey man, you can manipulate reality with your mind. Most people are like, oh sweet, cool, I can do awesome. You know, so it's a very attractive idea. And I would love that to be the case where I could like bend spoons and stuff. But I think it has to do more with like, so, you know, we were kind of making sense of just a blur of sensory images that are flowing around all day. But if we hyper focus and like get things very, very specific, it's almost like maybe we just notice that thing more, you know, whereas before, maybe if you didn't specifically say, here's what I'm looking for, when you're presented with exactly what you're looking for, you wouldn't notice because you didn't tell yourself that's what you're looking for.
Yep.
Does that make sense? It's almost like the new car when you're driving a Dodge Neon, you're like, holy shit, I see Dodge Neons everywhere. It's like, you're just kind of putting that thing, you're like intimately arranging a very specific thing into your mental universe. Then you start noticing that thing a little more.
Yeah. And that's the reticular activating system, I believe it's called, argument, that there's a component of your brain that can start to see patterns when you give it direction. But I also have to tell you, man, and I think you've experienced the same thing. Like, you know, part of that dating was yes, I assume my brain was like seeking out certain women like that. But I can also tell you that out of the blue, and you know this person, right? This was one person who fit that exact thing, texted me, right? Like it wasn't seeking out, like just in that 4-week period. And I hadn't talked to her in years, right? Yeah. Like those kind of weird things. You're like, whoa, like that, like, what is that about?
Yeah, there's also, and this is where, you know, when this guy gets into like kind of thoughts being like, you know, thoughts kind of passing through all of our heads, kind of, you know, or the possibility of thoughts passing in through all of our heads is like, dude, there seems to be a thing when like, you know, especially when I was dating people before, it's like, you know, all of a sudden start dating somebody, and then like these other people who you've had like history like that before, all of a sudden start hitting you up. This was like pre-Facebook and stuff. So that's when I used to tell you, I'd be like, Wes, I swear to God, there's some kind of like moon phase thing going on here where like women are linked up. They just know, like when options become available to you, I think they just like, I don't know, but the point being is I was surprised at how that captured my attention. I was pleased to start reading about all of this, like, you know, it is cool too to learn about like the vibrations, how like, you know, light is just or sound is just a certain vibration per minute, and then light is just a certain vibration per minute. I don't know, that stuff kind of, it's cool to ground things in something that kind of makes sense of the, you know, nature around you to some degree at least. But, you know, when he gets into like the definite chief aim, that was something that helped me with just doing the psych-null stuff, which I was having a problem trying, because I was trying to kind of like amass too much into one project. You know, that was something I really liked that my dad said to me a long time ago. He was like, you can only fit so much on a business card. Because I remember I was like trying to remember we were doing the power washing?
Yep.
I was like, Dad, I'm going to do power washing. I'm going to do decks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And he was just like, all right, dude, you can't do 50 things every day. So you only write 1 or 2 things. So it was like with psych-null, my problem was, you know, it's like I wanted to do the psychoeducation. When I think about it, it's like the thing that really I wanted to do psych-null was because the thing that made me want to do psych-null was kind of regretting the fact that I didn't learn how to interact with my mind in school. I'm like, that should be part of the core curriculum. And then as I'm developing it, it turned into this whole thing where like, I think I can design a thing where people can get therapy that works for free, which is a super lofty, ambitious goal. And I'm still, you know, trying to figure out a way to see if that can be done. But the whole point of it, especially with the definite chief aim, is like, if you're trying to manifest, they talk about like the imagination. If you're trying to manifest a thing that doesn't necessarily exist, as far as you know, you need to be very, very, very clear and specific with what you're trying to bring about. Otherwise, it's just, you try to tell someone and they're like, it's confusing. It's hard to bring a thing into existence that's like, you don't have a very, very clear understanding of exactly what it is. So doing that actually kind of reformulated the whole thing now, where it'll be more just online learning modules. You know, before I worry about trying to set up like groups and have people, it's just like I'm doing a website where it's just online interactive learning modules where people can then chat about it in like a little room after. So it helped me big time. You know?
Oh yeah. No, that is one of the major takeaways in the book, is developing your definite chief aim. 100%. And so let me ask this, have you written it out in complete sentences?
Not yet. I'm only like, I think 30 pages into it. So I don't think they've had us do that yet. But, and then, so I've been
Okay.
thinking about this a lot because it's like, I'm spread out across a couple different endeavors between like, I do comedy with the comedy podcast. I like doing this as well. And you could almost say like it would almost seem like they're mutually exclusive. Like, you're doing comedy. Everything has to be like, when you watch like, a lot of comedians go on TV the whole time. They're like, oh, they have to
Yeah.
like be like funny all the time.
Oh, dude, I
Um,
couldn't imagine that. I don't know how you do it, and I don't know how
well,
like the
I
Kevin
don't do
Hart's of the
that.
world.
I don't do that. That's like, I'll see comedians go on, they're trying to sell tickets. I get it, but they'll go on and just be like, my wife will let me have bacon. Oh, can I have
Yeah.
some bacon? And it's like, it's like, dude, you can be funny on stage without having to continuously play a character all the
Yeah.
time in your life. It's, it's kind of strange, but, so I started thinking, it's like, the thing I'm trying to get rid of is like the day-to-day kind of anxiety of like, am I doing the right thing? Right. If I'm like
Mm,
sitting down, like, did I do enough? Did I do that? And having the definite chief aim helps me big time of being like yesterday, it's like, I got an episode of Psych Null done. I meditated. I did all of the things that I set out to do. And then I could finally just go, I'm done, and just relax. Because if you're not at
mm.
like a 9 to 5 job, it's hard to turn that switch off because
Yep.
you don't ever feel like you're done. So it's like having sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but having the definite
No.
chief aim helps me ground myself in my day. And then my days don't feel like these scattered attempts at trying to do all these things. It's like there is actually some sort of order. And what I'm thinking is I'm trying to just what I'm trying to do is do like, content more or less that enhances people's daily experience by both kind of just by making them not take things so seriously and also kind of like teach them how to interact with their minds more. And that kind of
Oh
that
man.
fits everything. Stand up, the psych null stuff of like just letting people know that letting people get more present into their lives, letting them just kind of understand that like they can inhabit their life in a way that's like doesn't have to be this like reading Hollywood gawker bullshit of like my life is just normal stupid life, but like that's the real thing of like making it quote unquote, just letting people kind of ease into their lives, be happy with what they're doing, and like just work at manifesting whatever they think they want to bring into the world. That's my definite chief aim. Still a little vague, but it's like from there, it's a good start for me to be grounded in something fundamental where I don't feel like I'm just free floating around.
Oh, dude, no, 100%. And it's a great topic because have you ever, in what most people do, if they ever get to the level of like they're writing down what I do, like here are my actions. So I do this. But when you can take it to, at least in my opinion, I am this,
Hmm.
that sets the tone for everything. And the actions will change, the projects will change, but your identity doesn't, if that makes sense. Like when you
Yeah.
can self-select like your chief definite purpose of your identity, man, that is a game changer. Like, so for me, and then you can have infinite number of things under that, but you feel accomplished if you're being congruent with your identity. So for instance, like one thing for me is, and this has helped me, it relieved so much stress, like unbelievable amounts of stress, and made me way better at my job. And it's by the way, it's why we're doing this. When I was talking to my mom years ago and I was trying to figure it out, I was back on, in New York on Wall Street, and I was like just thinking all this stuff, and I'm like, mom, I'm trying to figure it out. And you know how, I feel like all young men go through life and they one day realize, and this is a psychological thing, they realize that one day that their parents are not superheroes. So then they start to go away from their parents' wisdom, if that
Hmm.
makes sense,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's like, my mom told me that if I, flare my nostrils, my nose is going to stick like that. And then I learned that it doesn't do that. Right. So it's like, well, mom's wrong about that. What else is she wrong about? So
Hmm.
then I start reading books and all these things. But then if at some point you kind of come back to your parents and you realize a lot of stuff they were teaching you was actually wise. And so I kind of came back to my mom for some wisdom when I was in New York, because I thought I had everything figured out. And and I said, hey mom, I'm just having a little bit of trouble because I'm figuring out like what the next stage is. And I'm making a lot of money back here in New York, but it's just not like I'm 95% happy. And that 5% just really bothering me. And I was ranting for like an hour on like how there's something I couldn't figure out. And she, in one sentence, just like nailed it. She's like, Wesley, she's like, you're a teacher. You've always loved teaching, right? Like ever since you were a kid, you loved taking, other friends aside and then like showing them little things and teaching them. And dude, that one sentence like changed everything for me. And I was like, damn it. Like, I wish I would have talked to her, 10 years ago. Um, But even now to this day, literally, so I was telling you before the podcast, I'm learning Adobe, what is it, After Effects right now. And which might seem like a wildly tangent activity from my normal day to day, because it's like, why is an investment manager learning Adobe After Effects? Doesn't make much sense within this smaller context or domain of, oh, you manage investments, but makes perfect sense in the ultimate domain, which is your teacher. So when I'm a teacher, I want to be the best teacher that I could possibly be. So I will learn all of the things and do all of the things that make me the best teacher. So I think that really helps, man. It'd be really cool to see what happens when you write down your definite purpose, and in there you create your identity, as weird as that sounds. So I am a father, right? I am a teacher. I am whatever it is for you. And man, I think a whole lot of things make sense after that point. And then the trick is reading it every day, or at least many times per week.
No, for sure, dude. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's so funny, man, because I feel like a lot of time we're kind of on these weird like synchronized it was like what you're
Cycle systems, bro.
describing. I was just doing the psych last night, and there's one concept that I was kind of like, I kind of, again, a lot of this is like, a lot of the things that I'm trying to do stem from like, I'll get like this feeling of like, super contentment, relaxation, and I want to be able to like somehow get that into other people. And it's like, it's awkward to explain these kind of things that are kind of beyond a lot of verbal stuff. But the thing that I was learning about was self as context versus self as content. And it's like you were saying, like, it sounds weird, but you got to write down who you are. And it's like, people are like, well, that's weird. It's like, well, then if you can't write that down, or at least even try to do that, it's like, well, then who are you? And B, who gets to decide who you are then? Right.
Yep.
So, and the idea with the self as context versus, so there's self as content, like you're describing, like, why would a financial manager learn Adobe Premiere and all this stuff? And it's like, yeah, if the world's telling you, well, I'm a financial analyst, there's no reason for me to do this. But it's like, if that's a self as content view, like I am the content of my social roles, my history, the things people tell me about myself, and my thoughts. That's all I am. That's all I get to be. And that's kind of a limited, kind of rigid view of yourself. Self as context is more like you're the arena which all of these experiences happen within. And, it's fluid, it's flexible. And again, like people could say, like, you could be like, I'm a numbers guy, and never let that other stuff kind of come into your mind of more like intuitive kind of thinking things. Cause you just, you went to school, like you're good at math, you're a numbers guy. Now you've just kind of downloaded all the associations that come with like, right, I'm a logical, blah, 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 which is a real thing. But like to be like, therefore I'm cut off from all of that other kind of stuff that's more intuitive and non-numbers based. That's more of a self as content. It's like, or that's just part of you. And there's, other parts. That's something I think that's really cool. Of like thinking about your self story, how married to you. Like, again, you same thing. You could have just been like, no, I'm in New York. I'm getting paid. I went to school. I'm doing business. And that's like, you let that other more intuitive part of yourself that's going like kind of knocking, be like, hey, something's kind of off. And you're like, and just kind of like pushing that down with like tons of alcohol or whatever else. You just kind of, you talk to another human being who was like your mother, and when she was able to shed some light on it, which, like, imagine if you never did that.
Yep.
What would be going on right now?
Oh, dude, you don't even want to know. You don't want to know.
You know what I mean? It's crazy. And it's like, that's one thing people forget about, like as poor or helpless or powerless as a person thinks they are, it's like, you still have other human beings at your disposal. And like, if you figure out how to really meld with them properly, it's amazing what people can do for each other. But it's like, if you're just closed in on yourself, being like, nah, I don't want to bother them, and nah, that's kind of weird. It's like, you're just constricting yourself unnecessarily.
Well, that's another part of the book. You got into the mastermind part, right, where he talks about.
Fuck, Jesus Christ, I love that. So yeah, I'm like 30. I don't use a bookmark for that book because I like to like have to open it and like reread stuff and know where I'm at in the book. It's kind of nice, but I don't know. Just from that book, it made like I'm like, I can't. I don't think Napoleon Hill would dig bookmarks. I think he would like me just reading through it and trying to like refigure out where I am. But I mean, dude, the mastermind it's like, again, it's not like, these aren't like concepts that are like, holy shit, this is great. But it's like, you think about it. I mean, it is kind of crazy, but they're very simple and available to kind of everybody. And it's like the mastermind is like, that's something that I think we lost big time, being able to have like, a group of 4 or 5 people. And again, it's like before I go on, as I feel like people should understand what it is, but it's like, it's just being able to use your mind along with other people's in a harmonious way that produces things that like, like I could be around 4 or 5 people, have a problem, and now my brain's just multiplied into 6 other brains trying to figure it out. But they said the thing that they need is like a harmonious cooperation. As soon as there's some sort of like underlying kind of resentment, kind of the properties of it go away, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and this is why we need to tell the men who are listening to this more, create your own group, like create your own men's group and talk about these things. And you have to be careful about who you let in, because everybody has to be on the same page. Like Matt and I, we have our own men's team, and we just met last week, and everybody on that team is out for each other's best interest. And we bring our wins to the table, and we bring our obstacles to the table. And man, I could tell you there's so much more benefit in putting the obstacles on the table. But having, how many people do we have in that? 5 or 6, something like that?
5, yeah.
But throwing an obstacle out there and saying,
6,
hey,
sorry. 6,
okay, yeah. So there you go. 6 people. So throwing when I throw out an obstacle, and then I have five guys telling me through the lens of their own life experience and research and reading and so on, their opinion on it and what they would do. And there's no judgment. There's no judgment saying, hey, given my life experience, I've been through something similar. Here's how I would look at it. And I completely agree with the book that the mastermind is so effective. And then Jordan Peterson talks about it, that sanity is not internal to the mind. It's external. It happens through conversation. So conversation with a group of people or a person that you respect and can offer a new worldview to you. Oh man, I could tell you that the things that I've done well and the trophies that I've gotten or the wins that I've gotten through life have all been because of other people. 100% of them.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's also like, this is something I think about a lot too. So when you're born, you have like, you need to eat, obviously. You need shelter. You need protection. But there's also another one that's attachment that no one really thinks about. Like when people think about their innate kind of biological drives, it's usually like sex and aggression, right? Like you need to be aggressive and like procure resources. And you obviously, you want to have sex and come and stuff. That's like a thing that's built into people. But there's also attachment is something it's like, I think as important as those things, but it's like, it's not like, if you don't eat for a certain amount of time, you obviously die. They've done, I think I've talked about this before, but they've done studies with, and I think this was from Jordan Peterson as well. They talk about like, baby monkeys and how they'll like forego food just to sit against a thing that's kind of like cuddly and soft, like a mother.
Yeah. They made a fake monkey.
Yeah. Like a fake monkey. And that plays out all the way into your life where it's like, same thing with like, what was like World War II when the babies weren't held and they would like die. They would die.
Her name, it was a famous woman. They called her Fat Ida or Fat Shirley or something. Mm-hmm. She was the one who found out that babies need connection because there was these kids in, what was it? What do they call them? Shelters. Yep. These kids in shelters who were dying for no reason. They couldn't figure it out. And then in one particular shelter, these babies were surviving. And it was because when this woman would go around and she'd clean, I think her name was like Fat Ida or something, she would hold babies, like literally multiple babies at the same time, like literally like strap them into her hips. And I believe that was the case. And that's why they didn't die, because they had this connection to another human.
Yeah. And they had even, I think in the, one of the world wars, there like places were getting bombed out and they didn't have the manpower. Same thing. They had these big hospitals where babies were sitting there and they would just like, if they didn't die, they would be like mentally, they wouldn't develop mentally properly if they weren't being like held, engaged and all this other stuff. So it's like, you got to think that carries out into your adult life. So, you say you get held and you get all the biological necessities of attachment, but it's like, that's a part of you that's always kind of pinging and pulsating, just like your, hunger, sex, and all these other things. It's just kind of vague and it's harder to nail down. But that's like something that needs to be addressed as you're older as well. And you need to feel secure. You need to feel attached. And if you don't have a group of people like that, you can kind of intimately, that's why like, this is my part of my, not my resentment. I think therapy is a great thing to do, but it's like, part of me is like, why the fuck do you got to pay someone $200 an hour to talk earnestly and get like honest feedback? That's a problem, I think, in terms of like a large scale. So if you can eventually gain that trust and rapport with a bunch of people who are like-minded, your peers, and who are on that kind of similar level, it's like that. I swear to God, it's a conviction of mine. It has to be just as effective as long as people, again, it all depends on who you're gelling with. If it's like you're in there and say I'm in there just being like, fuck you the whole time we're in there, obviously I have to be removed. That's not going to be helpful. But like, if like you're saying in that book is saying, if you can get on the, if you can harmoniously cooperate with a bunch of people in a way where like everyone has each other's best, it takes a part of you that might be kind of like scrambling around and just kind of like, hey, it just relaxes it. We're like, no, like I'm kind of plugged in and interwoven into systems and not just kind of out here on my own. And it's
And
like,
to have conversations about progress, like
yeah,
intentional based conversations of saying, hey, how can we all move forward, rather than, it was so funny, my buddy back in Philadelphia, I'm not going to name names, but he went to Nick's roast beef. You know Nick's roast beef?
mm-hmm.
Right, back in Philly. I feel like Philadelphia is the only place could have a roast beef, a roast beef
Store.
restaurant, So he goes there, and I call him just randomly, and I said, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I just got back from Nick's and roast beef, and I hear in the corner, I was just picking up some lunch for for the barbecue I was having, and we want some roast beef, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I hear this voice shout over to me like, hey, man, come over here. And he's like, it was a bunch of our buddies, and he's like, I haven't seen them in years. And I go over, and it's 10:30 in the morning, and they hand me a shot, right, of like whatever, whiskey or whatever. And he's sitting there talking to him, and so he drank a little bit with them. He's like, what are you guys doing here? And the guy's like, oh man, he's like, we call ourselves the 10 a.m. crew. He's like, we've been coming here every Saturday, for the last 3 years. We meet here every single Saturday, 10 a.m., and just start drinking at 10 a.m. in the morning. So I don't understand that. And you'd imagine how much time is spent with other men, because these are all guys there, like that core group of friends right there, but they're wasting their time sitting there drinking and watching football. It's like, hey man, first of all, probably not a good idea to have a meeting every single Saturday where you actually give yourself a name, and it's, the 10 a.m. crew, because you sit there and you drink every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I'm going to imagine that time could be better spent more productively. But it's like, if you do that, why not just change that to, instead of go to Nick's roast beef, and instead just order breakfast and talk about shit that will make you guys think a certain way about how to make progress in your lives. How about that? Why does it have to be weird?
Yeah.
Right. Now, at the same time, it doesn't have to be like you're getting on chairs and you're pounding your chest and doing all this like cheerleader woo stuff. Like, how about we just have a group of guys, we talk to each other like athletes would talk to each other in the sport of life. Here's what you're doing this thing wrong. So why not consider this? Or, hey man, great fucking job. You're doing these things very well. How can I learn from you?
Yeah. Well,
I think as men, we need to have more of those conversations.
It's true. And but it's also like, I think a lot of that's kind of cultural, where it's like, it would be weird as a man in this culture to propose that to a bunch of other men. And it's way more acceptable to like, because again, if you think about it, they are just kind of seeking each other's company, but it's like, how can we seek each other's company in a way that doesn't seem like gay, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
So to be like, hey, I really want to spend some time with you. They're like, let's go get drunk at 10 a.m. And then, all the weird inhibitions float away and you get that camaraderie and all this stuff. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, I feel like that's a societal message that's like, if you're going to hang out with other men, you got to be drunk and wearing a sports jersey and being like, ugh, which again is like, if you like to do that, by all means, knock yourself out. But if you're doing that every Saturday and then you're, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday is miserable, it's like, perhaps you could, spend that time a little better. If you're doing that and your whole life is awesome, great, keep doing that. But for most of us, we're struggling. So it's like, the idea of like, we should go get hammered. So you can even just go watch sports. Why do you have to poison yourself with it? Especially if it's like, we're going to have a couple of drinks and relax. Like, okay, dude, knock yourself out. Once like shots at 10 a.m. start getting introduced, like, sorry, that's alcoholism, dude. Like, it's like, we're all going to meet up and become alcoholics together. And it's like, again, I know I sound super judgy and like a dick, but it's like, I'm sorry, that can't pan out well the next day. Or that I respect the impulse. It could probably be done in a way that kind of serves you and everyone in your life better. Than coming home. If I've been drinking since 10 a.m. and I got to go home to like my kid, I'm scaring my kid. I remember seeing my dad drunk when I was little and being like, just from like the stuff you don't have your faculties aren't together. So I remember seeing my dad like stumbling around and being like, from what I've read in a book, like, oh shit, he's going to go beat my mom right now. Right, he didn't beat my mom as far as I know, but it's like, he would just go in there. And like, that's, as a kid, like if you're hammered around your kids, you're kind of scaring them. And they also say kids of alcoholics too they're way more perceptible of people's facial expressions, because they spend so much time monitoring their parents, and they can kind of tell. As a kid, you start to notice when like your parents are drinking, their face changes, and you kind of know like, oh shit, they're drunk now. So the children of alcoholics are much more can pick up on people's facial. So sorry, not to be like start getting preachy, but it's like, there is a consequence. Especially if you have kids, like you're coming home, you're drunk, sorry, like your wife can't be happy with you. You've been drinking
No.
since 10 a.m. You come home, you're immediately 100% definitely greeted by a sourpuss, to which you're
Yep.
drunk and you're like, well, you're fucking around. It's like, so again, not to be, I respect that. I like the fact that, the try to assemble and do stuff, but it's like, how can you do that in a way that's holistic and, fulfilling, again, like a definite chief aim, or like, what are you even doing here? Are you even attempting with your time here to like have some form of impact at all? It doesn't mean like, like Viking level fame throughout history. Just like, are you leaving an impact, and are you even gearing yourself to do so? And when you do that, it just feels good too. So it's like, I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I have found, and I understand you making the disclaimer saying, hey, I'm not judging, but I do think it's so important for us to talk to everybody like they were our brothers, right?
True.
So it's like, hey man, if you were my brother, like I'm telling you, get the fuck out of that bar at 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it's
right.
true.
Stop drinking shots, and
True.
it's not necessarily a judgment. I'm just saying for your own benefit. Like if we're on the same team, like, come on, man, let's go. And I agree with you. You're going to have a kickback beer or whatever, but you're taking shots at 10 a.m. in the morning and you're doing that consistently. They were doing it for 3 years straight. I've got the pattern, the result that produces at a certain timeline, at the end of that timeline, is very predictable. It is, you could probably bet there's going to be a certain amount of those guys. They're going to get divorced. They're going to have diabetes. They're going to have heart disease. Like these are very predictable patterns. And I think as men, we need to step up and say, hey man, just so you know, I'll love you regardless. I got plenty of friends to do that. I used to drink back in the day. I totally understand that. No necessarily judgment, but I'm just telling you as a teammate, like you're going to go down a really bad road. And I think we need many more strong guys to say that, because who else are guys going to listen to?
True.
We're stubborn, right? We're only going to listen to our equal peers, our equal or better peers. And if we don't perceive it to be that, then we're just going to push the suggestions off, because it's like, oh, this person doesn't understand, or my wife's telling me to do this. She doesn't get it. She's not a guy. So I think, honestly, man, I think it's our job and people like us to bring in those new conversations, because it's definitely I would say it's more of a modern belief system. At least I don't know of any older generations from my childhood who were talking like this. It was way more of like, just put in your hours and then go to the bar, throw back 3 or 4 or 5 beers at night and then watch the game. And I think that's primarily destructive. You can have a portion of that, sure, but I think most of that is destructive over time.
Dude, no, I totally agree. No, I do agree with you. And again, it's one of those things people have to ask themselves, like, is this causing me a problem? And again, even if you're like, no, I'm totally fine. It's like, well, yeah, if you're drinking shots physically, I can almost guarantee that, it's kind of jacking you up internally.
Yeah, man.
Well, it's also too a larger, it's like, I'm not going to say like, well, it's not even their fault, but it's like, if you look at the way society's organized, it's like, there's no option. If you're a dude out there, and I've talked to Andrew about this and I agree with him, it's like, you almost just want to go to the bar just to be around people.
Yep.
But it happened. What people happen to do at a bar is get drunk. So it's like, if they were doing another thing, you would just go there and do that thing. So it's like, that's kind of an unfortunate, it's kind of an unfortunate thing. Like that's like our watering hole, so to speak, that like it's sponsored by Budweiser, which is kind of, I think, a shame, because it's like, if you're telling me there's a place I could just go sit down and like drink like club soda and just like talk to a bunch of people, I would go there every day. I'd be like, this is awesome. But it's you got to go there and be, get drunk. And then it's like, so yeah, that is something I think that we'll probably, hopefully can get kind of reconfigured, especially like,
we need to do that.
What, like an Elks Lounge kind of thing?
Oh, dude, I'm telling. So I did it not too long ago. I brought a group of guys that I kind of like coached and stuff over time, and there was probably like 6 or 7 of us, and we went to Urban Plates. Mm-hmm. We went to Urban Plates for dinner, and it was just an unreal conversation. Right. It was like properly coordinated. Like there's no alcohol at all. Just like sitting there talking like, hey man, like, Aaron, you're doing this over here. Like you got to Goldman Sachs. Like, how'd you do it? Like all those things. And then pass the ball over here. Like, hey man, you lost 45 pounds and you kept it off. How did you do that? And, oh, hey man, you're just going into X, Y, and like, dude, it was unreal. It was we need to do it. At some point we need to do it with the listeners of this, where we just go and have a random dinner somewhere, invite people to have a purposeful conversation.
Dude, so think about this. I like that idea a lot. I thought about something recently that would be almost like a year-long or 6-month program where at the end of it, it culminates on everybody doing it have to present basically like something like a TED talk of like, here's my year, here's the things I was going for, here are my actual results, here's what I've learned. And that way it's like, you not only do you have to do these things, you have to do a public presentation of your year and what you
Awesome.
did. I think that'd be so awesome, dude.
Let's do it. Well, we can do it with our group, and maybe we can figure out how to coordinate it with the listeners here. But yeah, something like that, man. It'd be outstanding. More of that stuff needs to happen. And honestly, I feel like, and I know I might get some heat for this, but I feel like religion and churches used to do at least similar things in terms of it was like a community-based deal, and people will come there. Well, I can tell you that a lot of my friends, and including myself, like it's hard for me to go to do those things because my beliefs are not necessarily congruent with that. And it's hard for me, like it starts to get in the way. And I almost want to go back into like, I don't know, the days of Socrates where people used to join in a group and have logical debate and logical questions and answers and discussion. So I think that's needed more today. And for some reason we lost that. And I have a feeling it's because of the declining in the belief systems of our religion. So we need to, for those people who don't want to go to those locations, we need to give them some sort of outlet to do that. Because honestly, man, I think most people are starving for it. Most men are starving for it, for sure. I've never talked to one man where I said, hey man, let's talk about what you're interested in. Like if you had to set a goal next year or in the next 3 months, what would, and every single time I do that, it's an outstanding conversation. And I've tried that even with friends who I've been friends with for decades. And I have conversations with them that I hadn't had the prior 30 years. And just by setting the right foundation, completely changed the context of the conversation and what I thought as their identity prior.
Yeah. I mean, dude, not to even, I agree with all of that. Not even get to, or not to get too morose, but it's like, especially as you get older, it's like you're approaching your death. So it's like, what are you going to do about that? It's like, it's going to be a wild experience to have to kind of comprehend and do, but it's like, what could make that not as bewildering and terrifying and depressing? It's like, oh, if I were to dedicate my time from now till then of leaving some sort of lasting impact that would kind of outlive me, that gets into like what do they call it? Eternity projects, where, they see a lot of men, especially, are on these things of like trying to kind of outlive the fact that they're going to die one day. But it's like, I don't know. I think about that a lot, and it's like, dude, can you? And again, it's obviously you get slid off. Our whole culture is based on distracting us and seizing our attention into just meaningless nonsense. But it's like, can you take part of your day and just work towards doing something that is meaningful? It's like, if you can't do that, you'll most likely be depressed, anxious, irritable, whatever. And it's like, I'm speaking from experience on that. And it's like the stuff that I've been doing, especially with you, I would credit you to most of it. It just makes me feel better. And it just kind of adds a richer dimension to your life. You don't feel as 2-dimensional and as like just kind of getting like tumbleweeded around. It's like, no, I'm rooted in something. And that gives me like a certain calm and poise that it just wasn't there before.
Dude,
and you just go about your day. You're still the same person. You go do all the stuff you were doing before, but it's like you kind of have like, what people could equate as a soul, like a deeper purpose, something that's kind of like, it goes beyond job titles, this, that, and this, where it's just like, it's just, that's something we're lacking. Like you're saying, even just like if you're doing from like Greek, like Socrates level of just kind of like discussing these kind of things. And, it's like, that's awesome too, and it's like, again, I'm the same way with church. I think, if you're religious, I think that's awesome. I think it's cool to not rule out all these different, like I'm watching a video right now about like, is the sun conscious? And people get into like what they call self-organizing entities, which it's not like a table or a chair. It's like, the sun's made up of atoms and molecules that it somehow organizes itself. So yeah, maybe the sun is conscious. I don't put down any of that stuff. I don't try to disprove it. Personally, I think it's kind of cool. But it's like to be part of like a religion that's like, well, I'm this, and if you're that, you're wrong. It's like, I'd just like to have a thing where anyone, no matter what they are, can just go speak however they feel, and everyone can gain or reject that. If you're within a setting where like there's these verbal rules you can't violate, that's where I kind of tap out, where I'm like, that seems like that's, if you look at where the money typically flows upward and all those things, it's like, that's where I kind of tap out on that level of organized religion. But like a real kind of soul to soul, person to person place where people can just kind of really have these transactions that are like honest and just like from a place where they're not like forbidden by like taboos of thought and conduct.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you can't like you start fucking a goat in there, I'm kicking you out, but it always comes out. What about beast? Whatever. But people need that, man. It's like we got kind of, I think we knocked our own socks off with science, and it's time now to like pick up the pieces and kind of like keep all the good, awesome stuff. There's a lot of people like they try to like reject science as a result. It's like, no, science is pretty fucking impressive, man, in terms of what it's generated. Keep all of that, and let's just pick up the broken pieces of the stuff that it shattered, and that way we have both. It's like, why can't we have both of them? So
completely agree, man. And for the listeners out there, and you just dropped some knowledge, bro. I appreciate that.
It's the mega mind, dude. It's not me. It's just the mega mind.
but one thing I want to throw in here is what Matt and I are doing right now. We're reading this book. It's probably like the fourth time I read it. It's called the Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. Great book. If you're not into some of like the weirder stuff in there, that's okay. There's so many great messages inside there that are tried and true and fundamental. But I think the final component to that is when you're meeting with your guys or meeting with your friends, your men, if you can, read a book together. Like it's amazing the conversations, because at some point somebody's gonna say, well, what am I supposed to talk about? It's like, actually, so if you want a really easy prescription for that, get a good fundamental book. This is a great book to start with, right? And just read a few pages and then talk about those pages the next time that will give you so much content and so many more questions to ask each other and learn from each other. It's unbelievable. I mean, look at this conversation alone. We just had, add an extra 30 minutes of conversation about a handful of pages in a book.
And I only read literally, I think I'm up to like page 29, if I remember correctly. Yep. So I still got a lot of that book left. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly right, man. And if you're like, oh, that's just a book club, it's like, no, it's not, because that's just the ground. That's just to get people started. And once you kind of, crack that little, break that ice around a bunch of people, like people can really, there's like a, it's like a dam. There's like the currents of just nonstop thoughts and things that like, once you kind of crack that little dam, it's just like, then people can kind of flow and talk and, not
completely
just be sitting
agree.
there like, oh, I don't know, man, it's kind of weird. Like,
yeah. It doesn't have to be just try it, right? Exactly. Like, that's the thing. Just try it. Read a handful of pages, then talk about it. You'll be amazed. And as long as you bring an open mind to the table, you'll be amazed what happens.
But I almost say by nature you yearn for, like, oh, just try it. It's like I would say by nature you yearn for it, whether you want to agree or not. Like I do think it's like, someone's like, I'm not going to have sex anymore. Everyone could be like, what? How are you going to do that? It's like, it's obviously like, it's not as intense, but I think it's something that's built into us and has to be thought about the same way we approach hunger and all those other things. Connection is something that like, we need. Just if you want to get into like us as primates, like we are hyper connective people. We're not supposed to be out like, we're not like cats. We're not like, we're primates. We're supposed to be built into like very dense social networks in a meaningful way. And, that's what I think Facebook is so popular, because they kind of give us like a supernatural stimulus of that. Like, I have 5,000 friends. Oh, it's like, no, you don't.
No, you don't. So what were the wins from the week, brother?
So my biggest wins were, I would say I wrote out the whole nonsense, strange situation of last week, and in a way where I honestly just kind of took credit. I took opposite of credit. I took it on myself, because it was my fault. Kind of implementing the fact of being more present in my life. I've done pretty good at that, but the big wins were really, I just realized I fully integrated meditating into my daily routine, fully integrated exercise. I'm actually following through the things that I write down, rather than just being like, I have piles of just scrappy notebooks that I've started and just kind of like forgotten about. So like my big win is just the fact that I've now stuck to this program, and I'm now seeing it paying off. So that's
awesome.
It's my big win. I've successfully the habits have been built, and I'm like, that's pretty awesome.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Great job, dude. For me, I'd say the biggest ones now, again, just so everybody knows, Matt and I firmly believe, write down your wins. Mm-hmm. And Matt, I'm not sure. One thing that I do, I try to do it like, every couple months, is update my goals. And I put not just a vision board, but I take pictures or screenshots of pictures that represent the wins, if that makes sense. So that at the end of the year, when we have our larger meeting, I can look at that. So it's not, it's like a vision board, but then I've got the real trophy board.
Gotcha. I hear you saying, yeah. Right now I have micro wins, and they are building up towards my big win is going to be when I have the Psych Null website live. That'll be that's going to be one of my big, I think, end of the year type trophy things.
Awesome.
So
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that. There's little wins. So, my little wins are just sticking to this program and like writing down how I'm doing that, breaking my running records and all that stuff. But yeah, I think the trophies, what you're discussing, is when like that actually culminates in a thing you can be like, check this out. When it culminates
Well,
in a
yeah.
thing that like now, you can put next to your name or, whatever.
Yeah, but dude, even for instance, like you're getting your running records, right? I'm sure you're tracking on your phone.
Yeah. I track it on
So
my watch.
yeah, so you can take a little picture of that watch, man,
True.
and then just put you. And then when you're having a down day, and you're just like, oh man, it's, because down days are usually caused by a feeling of you're not making as much progress towards the horizon that you should, towards your goals that you should. But the problem with horizon, I've heard this from a guy named Dan Sullivan. The problem with horizon is it moves as you move towards it. So you have to stop and turn around and see the progress.
True.
And those little pictures, man, they show that progress. So for me, one thing I've been working on for years, and this actually goes right in line with the mastermind. So I'm trying to build the company so that it has multiple, it sounds so cheesy because I think this has been overused, has multiple sources of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So in our investment firm, right, it's, stocks, bonds, blah, 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 all those types of things. But then also I want to build that out. So we build it out to now it includes residential real estate transactions. And I've been working for years to try to get mortgages under our umbrella as well. And it's a different industry. And typically what happens is, you have like a mortgage guy, then you have like an investment guy, and you have an insurance guy and all these things. Well, I'm trying to bring that build an actual institution where it has all of those. And you can't do that by yourself. Like you have to do it with other people, kind of like we're talking about with the mastermind. Like, so you have to play nice. You have to be able and willing to play in the same sandbox as other professionals, because there's just not enough time in the day to go and learn those different domains. So anyway, I've been working on relationships for years with people in different industries. And like this week, we finally kicked it off in the mortgage world. I have a super, super close buddy, two buddies now in the mortgage world, where they're saying, yeah, let's try a project together where we're going to start, see if we can get you involved in this industry. And that is like an enormous win, because right now in the mortgage world it's one of the biggest waves in history in terms of opportunity, because interest rates are at an all-time low. So that, man, that was like, I was pumped about that one. So we'll see where it goes, but like just to be at the table, which in finance, that's oftentimes a pretty big bottleneck, is like, can you get a seat at the table? And if you can't play at all, right? Like zero. So, and the way you get at the table is you got to know your stuff, and people have to like you. As great, yeah. And those are both equal. And in fact, I would say probably the latter is more important, that people have to like you, because otherwise they say, get out. We don't want you at the table. Right. So it's like, dude, I'm so thankful and grateful that I'm now at the table with these guys, because man, if you see that industry, it is on fire right now. It's going to stop at some point when interest rates normalize. But it's like, hell, man, if we can add another service to this and teach people about mortgages and then make money as a result, that is it's a real game changer. So that is by far the biggest win of the week. I'm like, can barely sit down, because I'm so pumped about it.
That's awesome, man. I mean, and also think about it too. Like, you had been working at this for years, and all of a sudden it just became, the conditions became super favorable. But if you were all of a sudden the conditions became favorable and you're like, oh, how can I do this? How can I do this? By the time you try to get into it, it would have been not like too late. You still could do it, but like, that's kind of just like work paying off over time, and then things aligning with what you're doing. I think it's fucking awesome, man.
No, man, I appreciate. Yeah, it's literally years. I'm not saying that because I'm bragging. I'm saying for those listeners, for all of us, you have to have those North Star goals, and you have to know your identity. Like Matt and I were talking about, like, who do you want to be? You want to be a teacher. You want to be a business person. You want to be X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. And you work at it for years. I mean, decades. It never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops. And then you get the wins along the way. But a lot of those wins, if not all of them, are a result of cumulative effort over time. That's it. Like that's the name of the game, not this like BS, like, success overnight. That's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Like invest now invest now in this new thing. I get messages a lot about like certain cryptocurrencies. Like, dude, if you get in on this now, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I could, but it's like, I'd rather just continue doing the things I'm doing and then let that align with whatever kind of like gold rush type things pop up, if they do. But at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, if I give $100 and all of a sudden it turns into $1,000 for the thing, it's like, yeah, making that money is awesome. But to me, it's more meaningful to pursue the things that I'm after and just take those victories, because they're not my victories to have. I'm not a crypto maniac. Like it's not, and again, a lot of that is too, like of not being kind of swept up in these things. Like you were saying, like, imagine if you just were like just doing something else and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get into mortgages now without all of your experience and work. It wouldn't really work. But like the fact that you're on this path and you're moving towards it, these little things or these windows and doors pop open that you can pass through because you're in that lane already, rather than trying to just like, if you were just be like, if you were doing, I don't know, say you're in the military and now all of a sudden like, oh, mortgages are hot. And you abandon all of your military training. Like, I'm a mortgage guy now. It's like, hey man, not really. But, it's like, again, maybe you can jump in and make a couple bucks. I'm not saying you can't switch up like that, but if you can really ground yourself in like, a role and all these other things, like you were saying, it just is more natural. You're more in your element. I think it's awesome, man. I always love hearing how your long-term stuff pays off in like the immediate present. It's just, to me, it's an inspiration. It's always like,
I appreciate it, man. I really do. And it's just a snowball effect. Right, like pick a direction, go there as best as you can. Sometimes you have to pivot for sure. I'm not discounting that. Sometimes you have to dabble and try things out. But obviously there's a point of which it's unhealthy, where it's a constant stopping and starting, and then you're getting off of one ladder and you have to start at the bottom to climb another ladder. Well, I know people who do that. Who do well, and
I did that my whole life.
Yeah, but not really. I mean,
no, that's true. That's true.
One of the things that's phenomenal about you and your history is the theme is, I want to do what I want and I'm willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to get there. And you've done that. And if you look like, you've tried different things and different projects, but it's ever since I've known you, it's been about how can I have my autonomy? I want to live how I want to live. And you are one of the few that's congruent with that. Right? True. Like, I'll sleep under a bug net. I don't care. Right? Like, I'll do all these side jobs. I don't care, because I'm working towards this thing. And dude, you're living proof. Like, you're doing it now.
True. That is true.
Like, all the stuff you're doing now is a result of all of those things. So I would not put that in the dabbling category or starting over. And like, no, I think that is all congruent towards this vision that you're actually living now, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do agree. I just can say I have the mind of a dabbler. Like, I love, and Brittany makes fun of me for this all the time, just with little projects. Like, I'll just start something and she's like, what happened to your dehydrator? You're still making beef jerky? I'm like, oh, shut up, Brittany. I'm not doing that anymore. But yeah, that's something I really, it's like, and it's a good thing to have, but it's like, if you can really ground yourself in something and just kind of move, not be scared to just fully move into that and be like, this is what I'm doing. Again, I'm still working on my definite chief aim. I'm still trying to flesh that out, but I do have the kind of, the bits of the idea of like, how I want to arrange that. I'm still just trying to figure that out. And that's something too. Like, do you even have that? Start with that. Yep. That's such a great word. Such a great place to come from. That's not like embedded in like a job title so much to say, but like a job title comes along with the thing that you actually think you are, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, at 100%. And dude, my key takeaway from today was when you said, dedicate at least a small portion of your day to doing something meaningful. That was spot on. That was an aha moment. That was some knowledge and wisdom dropped, man. That was a great line.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah. And I mean, that's trying to think. I mean, really, my takeaway is it really was just a reminder of like the thing, of your situation you're in now, of like, I've been working for all these years and here's this thing. My takeaway is like to just stay in, my daily win mode right now is just, my wins just have to do around habit building, man. It's just like, they're not going to, you're not going to do them and be like, oh man, my whole life's changed. But it's like, you're all of a sudden like your day changes. It's weird. Like I do have the meditation and everything. So I have the meditation built in, which is a thing I always wanted. So, I don't know. I'm bad at takeaways. My brain's very much like
no judgment, bro.
So I'm a very bad takeaway guy. I always feel pressured. I'm like, I can't think of one.
How about this? What's the homework for the?
Okay. Well, the one takeaway too is I think a lot about the desire for human connection. Your thing too. If you don't know how to organize some sort of group, use a book. Very similar. That's that one I think was very good. What is I would say to start trying to read. I know, you know what I think the takeaway, or not the takeaway, the thing people should do is just start, if you're listening to this, start feeling around and taking people's temperature around you, of like your friends or family, and try to start forming just a little group, man. Just a little, you know, a little something, man. Just a little get together. Just try forming it and see how you feel and everyone else feels. Pretty sure everyone will like it.
Oh, dude, 100%. 100%. And here's an easy way to do it. Just invite a couple dudes out to coffee or out to lunch and just say, hey, just want to talk about somebody's next goal. Like, that's all. Just bring one goal to the table. We're all going to talk about it. And you might feel a little weird at first, but I promise you it's an awesome discussion. And then you help each other. Pretty simple. Super simple. It's incredibly simple, but incredibly impactful.
Yeah. Or just tell people you want to form a mega mind. Like, dude, I want you to be in my mega mind.
There you go.
I'm telling you, dude. I think like we're going to start meeting and mega minding. Because if you're friends, if you're already embedded in people's lives, you kind of know what's going on with them. It's like, look, we're all kind of marooned here. Let's island up and mega mind out just like once a week, once a month. And I think people will be pretty much into it. And if people aren't into that, then they're not part of your mega mind, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Yeah, mega minds don't come easy, dude.
So for the people who read the book, I think it's called Mastermind, but I like Mega Mind better.
It's Mastermind.
No, we're going with Mega Mind.
We're going with Mega
Mind. That sounds so much better.
Mega Mind.
We're gonna have to build our own Mega Mind someday. That's awesome.
I always think of it like the Green Ranger. I think I talked about this last time. It's like the Green Ranger
playing the flute.
Yeah, it plays the flute, and the big robot dinosaur comes out. That's the mega. You know, you need to have all the Rangers assembled, and then whatever that thing's called comes out. The toy.
Yeah. So the Green Ranger, I believe his name was Tommy.
Yeah.
I liked him as the White Ranger. The White Ranger. You know, when he manifested a greater being in the White Ranger, it was awesome. And he had like the vest.
Yeah, he kind of ruled.
Oh yeah, the White and Gold Ranger. Brother, we will end on that. As always, awesome talking to you. Until next week, man.
All right, man.